So my name is Bob Fornal. I work at Leading Edge, small company, Columbus, Ohio. We solve problems for people at its simplest. Okay, we're going to start there and move on to the next one. I'm going to get the mouse out of the way. As I'm doing the single screen, I don't have my notes as I normally would, so we're going to kind of play it by ear and go fast. So what is DevOps? Do we all know what DevOps is? Okay, good. We need to skip a few things because of our time frame. Do we all know roughly what the agile model is? Okay, good. Well, that's 2 slides now. Continuous testing. Okay, continuous testing is one of those that hear about, don't see a lot of, see it done well, see it done wrong, and badly. And that's mostly where this talk came from, was when I saw people doing it badly. Continuous testing should be whole team. Okay, the dev writing that core code doesn't just shouldn't be just doing unit tests. Test-driven development is one of the patterns that should be used. I will be honest, I'm a crusty old developer and I don't do much TDD design because I learned to code long before they even had the concept of tests. Okay, your code ran or it crashed. There really wasn't much middle ground. I do use TDD when I'm testing. So when I'm writing my unit tests, I write the test first. I make sure it fails. Okay, one of the main reasons I wrote this talk had a peer that stepped into a role for me for a bit while I helped another client out. And when I came back, he had written something like 2,000 tests, which was about appropriate for the amount of work he did in 6 months. And I went to fix a bug and took out the code that this was testing, and it still worked. The test passed. And found out through asynchronous stuff that he had 2,000 tests that always passed, regardless of what the code looked like, which isn't really useful when it comes to continuous testing. Okay, everybody tests. I mean, you really do have to be involved in all aspects of it. You have to be informing QA properly, things like that. I mean, these are real basic things so far. Okay, in DevOps, what does continuous testing mean? Okay, we get a little deeper into the definition here. Early defect detection. Okay, your automated tests here, running as soon as you have code changes committed, is an important piece of this. Have a pipeline with one of my clients that I work with that it always runs that initial test when we open a PR against dev, which is really interesting because it's running the entire dev build pipeline, which is not quite what you would want, right? I mean, I'm shoving my code on my branch in there before we close out the VR. Not exactly how it's supposed to go, but we do find defects really fast because we break the dev environment quickly. Fast release cycles. Okay, so when we have proper continuous testing, those release cycles move much, much quicker because, well, at the base level, you have trust in your code, right? I have unit tests, I have integration tests, I have end-to-end tests, I have manual tests, I have smoke tests, all those layers of that pyramid in there, and you can trust that code more, right? When I walk in and I have a code base and it has no unit tests, how much do you think I'm trusting that code? You don't take the time to write the unit tests. I mean, even if they have the smoke tests and the automated tests, I've had clients with that. How do you trust the code? Right? At the core level, you really can't. Improved collaboration. Okay, when you've got the whole team testing and they're working together, and that's a part of the process, that collaboration is powerful. Enhanced test coverage. I was having a conversation actually on the way here with Angelo Mendato. He's one of the ones that helped set up the conference. And we were talking about test coverage. And he pointed something out that I really hadn't thought about that I think is a good inclusion in this talk, is that when you talk about test coverage, do we have to cover 100%? I try to with unit test level. But when you start to move up the pyramid, is there value in 100% coverage, right? When you're talking automated tests, if there's a chunk of the code that's rarely used, right? I design websites all the time and I've got these different paths and I monitor what pages people use. And if there's one section of the code that nobody ever goes to, is there really any value of having tests against it? Well, yeah, I know it works, but if nobody uses it, there's really not much value there, right? Okay, so do we have to have 100% coverage? Well, not necessarily. All right, so what do we have here? Strategy. So, basic agile testing and develop methodologies. We need to automate. Everybody needs to be responsible. That's the tricky part. Okay, and really, and where it gets challenging is when you're talking to your business owners and those folks. We need them. We need them involved, right? Clients that don't see the value of having a sprint review where you bring in the people using the code, right? Where they see it for the first time running and they're like, well, that wasn't quite what I expected, or what about this scenario? That's valuable and important in terms of testing too, right? I mean, that's a form of manual testing. And done continuously, early, often. And here's the one that almost everybody misses. You test after the fact too. You get it released out, you go back, you retest, you recheck things, make sure things aren't broken in the process. You could read the roadblocks you probably have by the time I've gone through this, right? Handoffs, always a problem. Requiring sign-offs, adding that bureaucratic process. I mean, it slows things down, and you're more prone to make mistakes. That automation is important. Continuous testing, implementation. Okay, so here, shift left testing. We've all heard, well, how many haven't heard of shift left testing? Right, test earlier. Okay, really, that's what we're talking about here. The earlier in the life cycle you're testing, the shorter your life cycle actually ends up in the long run. It doesn't sound like it would because you're writing more code. Okay, continuous development and continuous integration. These all kind of tie together. We've heard these terms. I would assume most in the room have heard of continuous development, continuous integration. Okay, just adding some definition in there. Pros. There are pros and cons to everything you do, right? Quick delivery, get things out fast. Fast feedback. You actually end up handling risk better. You have that risk-based testing, okay? But there are cons that come along with this. You can push a bug into production really, really fast. I've done it, okay? You get in that cycle and the code gets out there and something goes out and it impacts somebody else's code and everything falls apart. It can happen very, very quickly, okay? And when you get the bug in production, at the end of the day, you can lose customers. And that's loss of sales, and that degrades things. Okay, so this is a risk. Technical limitations. This is an interesting report that I found here. Technology limited holding back testing strategies in 53% of the respondents. That's a high number. They don't have the technical capacity to put in proper testing. I don't know if that's people or software or what, but I mean, that's a huge number of companies that aren't properly testing their code. Stuff we rely on every day, right? It scares me like when my bank does things like, your password can only be 8 characters and it has to be letters. What? Last time I heard that was 40 years ago. Okay, I know a bank that does that. Okay, technical limitations. And then budget constraints, right? We all have budgets, that kind of thing. Things shift and flow. Budget comes into play when it comes into talking about continuous integration, continuous testing. Where do we test? This is an interesting one, right? We test when we're testing, we test when we're building, we test when we're writing code, we test when we're planning, we're testing when we're monitoring, operating, deploying, and yes, we're testing when we're releasing. Guess what? We test a lot, right? This is one of my fun ones that I built. I liked this one. Yes, you do. We have to test everywhere, all the way through the process. Okay. Here was a fun one. At the very first place I gave this talk was at this conference 2 years ago in Columbus. And somebody popped up a question and said, well, how do I test my pipeline? And I won't say I'm the best at AWS. In fact, I'm probably collectively at this conference, I'm probably one of the worst because I'm actually working with a company that's doing Terraform. So I haven't written much in the AWS ecosystem recently. Okay. But I do work with pipelines, I work with Terraform, I'm building stuff. And how do you test that it actually deployed properly? There's enough tools out there, and people always throw out these, oh, there's this tool, this tool, this tool. But I mean, I went 3 years certified AWS, right? And that question never occurred to me. It was an interesting one that came out. And there are tools out there. There are ways of doing it. I don't know if they need to be better or worse or not. And then we get to like the Netflix question, how do they release so quickly, right? How do they release, right? They move to the cloud, they move to AWS. Use the Chaos Monkey, the Simian Army, all that really cool stuff. And where am I at on time so I don't kill somebody? Am I close? Where am I at on time? Anybody? My watch died on me last night. I got 20 minutes to the hour, 20 minutes to the hour, so I got 15. 7 minutes? Okay, I got 7 minutes. We're good. Okay. So what are the Chaos Monkey and the Simian Army? This is the opposite side of testing. Testing, as I normally think of it, is I test that something works. Right? Netflix did something different. It was really cool to read the article on it. They tested what happens if I break it? What happens if I go over here and I got this cluster of servers that are really important for routing things through and I just shut it off? What does it do? Right? Does it roll over correctly? Does it do what it's supposed to do in a failure scenario? They turn things off all the time, on and off and on and off, just to see what happens. I mean, when you hear the phrase Chaos Monkey, that makes sense, right? They're testing failure. A whole other layer to this testing. And when you look at the things that they test, it's pretty impressive. Okay? It's interesting when I'm watching Netflix now and something all of a sudden does something weird one day. It's like, did I get caught by the army somewhere in there, right? It's an interesting thought, right? Testing methodologies. So we talked about shift left testing. There is shift right testing, moving it more towards the end of the life cycle, something to be aware of. It can improve failure tolerance, okay? So that's where that Simian Army and that kind of thing comes into play. They're actually testing in the production environment. It's kind of scary if you think about it, right? Testing in the production environment, breaking things in prod. Okay, shift right. Smoke tests, this is one that I see people miss a lot of companies. I'll just run the whole test suite and then you wait for 20 minutes on deployment, and it's like, guys, where are the critical paths? I don't want to test 100%, I want to test those critical pieces. Unit component testing, we've got to remember those all the way through the process. Integration messaging testing, performance testing, functional testing, all important pieces within the process. And there was something I wanted to say in there and I'm blanking on what it is at the moment. Maybe I'll come back to it if I have time in my 7 minutes. Regression testing, user acceptance testing, all important pieces within this process. Now, one of the ones that I'm learning is in user acceptance. Your users really do have to understand how to use the software. I've got a tester that doesn't know how to use the software. It keeps telling me it's broken. Not because it's broken, because she doesn't understand how to use it and she's putting the wrong values in and things aren't populating the way she expects. So my code's broken. It's really scary when that's your tester that says go or no go on a deployment, right? This is really not continuous testing in this scenario, but those users do have to know how to use it. And sometimes when we're building complex things, that becomes a real challenge. Automate where you can, right? The preference is not to have a checklist on an Excel spreadsheet or a Google spreadsheet and somebody going down and checking the boxes, right? To make sure things get done. Automate where you can. What was the black something or other where the company deployed and they have this little checklist and they forgot to deploy the code to like the 9th server out there or something like that. And the company, it did automated trading. And that one server triggered and went crazy and did something like $2 billion worth of trades on a company that was only estimated at like 900 million in 27 minutes before somebody caught it and shut it off. They bankrupted themselves in 27 minutes. Manual processes, right? An automated process is not going to miss that 9th server. It's not going to miss that checkbox. Checking boxes is boring. I've done it. It's easy to miss something. Okay, test early, test often. Eliminate your risk. Okay, get feedback on quality, reducing opportunity for errors. Pair programming. Now, this is one I throw in here. This is interesting. Pair testing, pair programming. I throw this one in because I have had opportunities with juniors, mid, seniors all along the way. And one of us is writing tests and the other one's writing code, and we swap back and forth on it. And it's really an interesting cycle. You're not slowing yourself down because those tests have to be written. That code has to be written on both sides. I've watched it happen with time zone differences. So my pair on the other side takes the code that I wrote today and writes all the tests. Or he's writing all the tests and I'm coming in and he's got all these failing tests and I'm writing all the code to make a pass. just an interesting way of taking this a different direction, along with the continuous testing pipeline. So I should be really, really close to time because I can't see any clocks. The spreadsheet or the PowerPoint deck, the conference has it. They're going to be getting something out on it. The one on the right, I think, is actually the same deck if you wanted to scan. The left is a survey if you feel like filling it out. That's my survey. Just kind of what we had here, and I know it was insanely fast.